listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And we have a very special guest with us this week. We have Bishop Scott Jones from the Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church, which he's located there in Houston. And if you've turned on your TV or Facebook or anything, you know, Houston's got a little bit of water over the last week. And we wanted to have Bishop Jones on to tell us a little bit about what's going on down there and share some stories and just give us a glimpse into y'all's world down there in Houston.
Well, thanks for having me on. I sure am glad for this opportunity to share our experience. It's been quite a week. The rain has finally quit here in Houston, but in the far southeastern corner of my conference, the rain is still coming down and the floodwaters are rising in Beaumont and Port Arthur. So while it started late Friday night, it's not over yet.
Right. I've had a couple of conversations with Eddie Irwin out there, making sure that they're above water and doing okay. And he's kind of keeping me up to date. But that's exactly what he said. As the rain has stopped there, it's continuing on in other places.
Our United Methodist people have been incredibly active in helping their neighbors, in serving the community ever since this started. Sometimes it's been just neighbor to neighbor. People checking on others around them. In other cases, our congregations have served as temporary shelters, allowing people to come there if the church building was dry and others in the neighborhood were flooded out. One of the interesting stories is Faithbridge United Methodist Church, which decided to be a separate shelter for a little while. And they decided to welcome dogs to come in. And so we have dogs that have been in the church because, you know, if folks were flooded out of their house, they couldn't very well leave their beloved animal behind. And so having a dog-friendly church shelter was a big thing. We've had a number of our pastors flooded out of their houses. DeAndre Johnson is a worship leader at Christ United Methodist Church in Sugar Land. He was on the roof of his house. Now, in his case, the Coast Guard helicopters didn't come and rescue him. They rescued over 1,000 people that way. But his senior pastor took a kayak and went to his house and rescued him. You know, we've had others get rescued by boat. Chapelwood United Methodist Church on the west side began a boat ministry, and their senior pastor, John Stevens, had been out rescuing all kinds of people. So our churches have been very, very active in helping people get through this incredible mess. We've had an average of 33 inches of rain all over Harris County, some of them over 40 inches since Saturday morning. You know, and I was bishop in Kansas for 12 years, and they talk about Kansas being flat. No, Kansas has lots of hills. I mean, this place, it is just flat. The Gulf Coast is an hour's drive from here, and the elevation changes 40 feet between here and there. That tells you it's a very flat area, and the water just takes a long time going to drain to the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Bishop, just in the first few days, Matt and I and most of our listeners being outside of your annual conference and being able to help today or, you know, anytime soon, what is y'all's most immediate need?
Well, I have posted an appeal letter, and people can read the full text of it by going to our conference website, which is www.txcumc.org. You'll find my letter there, and I summarized it in 3 ways. First, we need people praying for us. It has been just heartwarming hearing about people who are concerned about our well-being and praying for an end to the rain and an end to all of this and for strength to get through it. Second, we need money. We have been blessed already with some fellow annual conferences and Methodist organizations who have called. UMCOR gives us an automatic $10,000 to get us started. And so for people to donate money to umcor.org or to go on our conference website and give us money directly. Both channels of fundraising are important. UMCOR money has to be used only for individuals who are affected, and we will set up a case management process that will make sure people who are in need get the money with the priorities that UMCOR gives us. On the other hand, we also need flexibility with money that we can use for other purposes, like rebuilding some of our churches that are in trouble. And so money donated directly to the conference comes with fewer restrictions and more flexibility for us. And so I've offered for people to do both things. Part of what I've done this morning, you guys, is to hold conversations with my district superintendents and the conference staff leadership to align our resources so that we can really get serious about the recovery process. There will come a time when we will welcome volunteer and mission teams who come into Houston and give us 2, 3, 6, 12, 100 days, whatever. That was a joke, I guess. Somebody might come for 100 days and help with the long-term recovery. My people who have been through the hurricanes in the past tell me this is a 3-year process. We will still be hosting VIM teams, 24, 30 months from now. And so we're beginning to identify how we can host those people and welcome their help in terms of hands-on volunteering. We are not ready for that. In fact, our people are just now beginning to venture out and clean out some of the damage, and that's local. The long-term recovery is going to take a while.
Right.
Bishop, you shared one story of you shared a couple of stories of how churches were being active and involved. Are there any other stories that you'd like to share with our audience so maybe they can hear how the church has been in action during this time?
Clear Lake United Methodist Church delivered several truckloads of materials to the shelters nearby. It wasn't clear from Charles Anderson's blog how they gathered it all so quickly, but they had it and delivered truckloads of material to that area. Many of our churches opened up as immediate shelters because in the middle of a rainstorm, you got to go someplace. And then as the process unfolded, the Red Cross came by and said, please shut this down and let's send them to a big Red Cross shelter where services can be provided in a better way. Yesterday, I was down at the convention center in downtown Houston. I don't normally wear a clerical collar, but I did yesterday. And I registered as a Red Cross volunteer to provide pastoral care. There are between 8,000 and 9,000 people who are expelled from their homes and living there at the convention center on cots. And so ran into one of my other pastors, Tommy Williams from St. Paul's United Methodist Church. We're just down there talking to people who needed someone to pray with them or somebody to talk to. And that kind of thing is just going on all the time. Churches that are reaching out and looking for what might be done. We also should not sort of downplay the basic one-on-one support that people are giving to their neighbors, taking folks in. Mary Lou and I, my wife, we live within 500 yards of Methodist Hospital. The chaplain's office at the hospital used our neighborhood website to say, hey, we have staff at the hospital who can't get home. Can anybody provide housing? Well, Mary Lou and I had a guest room empty. And so we housed Montez, a chaplain who had been on duty for 48 hours and gave Montez a room and a breakfast and then took him back to work. So that sort of stuff, not that Mary Lou and I are anything unusual, it's just going on all the time, all over town. People taking in their neighbors and their friends. Houston is the most diverse city in America. We are more diverse than New York or Los Angeles in terms of the balance and diversity of ethnic groups. And yet we're watching all kinds of people who are helping their neighbors without regard to race or language or immigration status or any of that sort of thing. It's just a really heartwarming deal to see the city coming together.
And it is, and especially in this time where there's so much loss and there's so much grief and devastation through this, hearing those stories of hope are important. We've seen, I know I've seen the things on Facebook and the news where, the Cajun army's come over with boats and things like that. And gosh, there's been a lot that's happened in our world in the last few weeks that seeing that brings a lot of that hope back into picture of neighbor helping neighbor regardless of anything else.
I think the other thing that most United Methodists are aware of, but it bears repeating, is that we in our disaster recovery are usually the first in and the last out. And so I fully expect that to be the case here. We had floods here 2 years ago and hired a case manager. She literally had her salary end a month ago after 2 years of work to help. And that was a relatively, well, compared to this, it was minor. I don't know if it was minor at the time. So we kept her on for a couple of months on a month-to-month basis. Well, we called her yesterday and said, you're back to full-time work for at least a year, because she's a skilled case manager and this sort of stuff. And so there are other people who are flashier and get lots of kudos. We United Methodists stay for the long haul, and we're going to be doing this for a long time. One of my churches in town, large church with a full-time associate pastor, has just delegated that associate pastor for the next year to work full-time on disaster recovery. Wow. Whatever his job description was before this, he's now doing disaster relief for the next year. We're evaluating that church as a staging area to welcome our long-term VIM teams. Unfortunately, the Texas Conference has had experience with this sort of stuff before. We went through Hurricane Ike. We hosted Katrina refugees. And as bishop, I've been blessed to inherit a really strong leadership team who know what they're doing. And so we're getting down to work and dusting off our old policies and our old procedures and saying, okay, do these need to be revised, or can we continue to just do it like we did before?
And Bishop, that's one of the things I've really appreciated about the United Methodist Church is our ability to, we don't necessarily want to draw the headlines. We're not out there to say, hey, we're going to be the first ones there. But knowing and having worked with UMCOR, I've worked with UMCOR through 3 now natural disasters in Oklahoma, and knowing that we are the first in and we are the last to leave. And one of those cases that comes to mind was one of the F5 tornadoes that tore through Oklahoma a few years ago. We started out with like a group of about 50 people that were part of this like VOAD group that were taking care of people, making sure people were taking care, needs were met and all that stuff. And by the end of it, it was 3 United Methodist pastors and the UMCOR people when we closed the last case. And so when I talk to people about UMCOR, that's like the thing I'm like really instilling in people is that, you know, we are really the first in and the last to leave, because we understand this as a long-term deal and not something that's just flashy and short-term and then we move on. We really are committed to the long haul. And that's, Bishop, as you start entering into that process, I'll be praying for you and your team to that they have a fruitful experience, and that they are reminded that the long term is where they really need all the help that they can get.
Thank you. And one more word to get out to your listeners. If they are United Methodists, please contact your conference disaster coordinator. Our guy is Scott Moore. We're privileged that he can work full-time for the conference as our Director of Missional Excellence. He was on a phone call last night that was hosted by UMCOR and had 60 conference coordinators on the phone call. When we're ready, when it makes sense, your conference disaster coordinator will know that and will be scheduling you, because nothing worse than to bring a group of people down here and waste your time and travel money. We want you to be useful and make a difference, and we'll be ready for you at some point. We're just not sure how long it's going to take us and when the right time is going to be.
Yeah. Right. And that was one of the big messages we want to get out of. We know people want to go and help, but when's the right time to go? And it's not always right now. It's here in a few weeks and 6 months and a couple of years when those moments are right. And that was something that Bishop Harvey really stressed to our listeners when they had all the flooding in Louisiana this time last year. And the other thing was, we're 3 to 6 years out on this recovery. And like y'all, it's going to take a long time. And we want people to know that and understand that, and, be excited to go today, but be excited to go in the summer and next year.
Right.
And so, Bishop, when you're ready to make that plea, let us know. We'd be glad to have you back on again and to be able to make that plea. And I already know that I'm going to use this on Sunday morning for my congregation to be able to see. And then, I know Zach will probably share it through his congregation. And we want to be able to make sure that we want to be holding you all in prayer, because I know that this is a difficult time, and you're still, it's still raining in some places. And so, we just want you to know that we are praying for you and we're holding you in prayer. And so, Bishop, we thank you for your time. And for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
And I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media. And we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.